Welcome back, everyone. At this point of the webinar, we're going to get a presentation from Shane LaValley. Shane is with the FISA team, that's the Fire Equipment Services and Supply Acquisition, I can't say that, Acquisition Analyst team, and I'll let Shane introduce himself along with his fire calls and some of the other things he does. And I appreciate your time, Shane.
Thank you for that introduction. Everybody hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. So let's see. Yes, FISA team. That's why we all refer to it as the FISA team. That is a mouthful when you go to say it. So as far as fire qualifications, let's see. This is my 26th year with the Forest Service, going into the 27th. So time flies when you're having fun. That's all I can say. My qualifications are all finance related. Go out as a procurement unit leader mostly, but also as a contracting officer, sometimes down at Albuquerque Service Center helping with the payments. I also have buying team member, buying team leader, and I went out as a technical specialist on the one of the serious accident investigation teams. So those are my quals, and with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm hoping to run through the slides in about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. I do talk pretty fast, so the goal there was I would present the material and then be able to address any questions or the like at the end of the presentation. The presentation is a little bit different than what I did in 2013 for this group. We did have a few more slides in that one, so what I did was I pulled some of that stuff out so that the documents could be standalone documents. They could stand on their own. So that is like the scope of solicitations, a little bit more information, a little more on the National Solicitation Plan, how changes are made to the templates. I also attached the contractor performance rating as a separate document, and this is a simplified version that I'll go over at the end of the presentation, as well as the rating guidelines that were part of that. So I think those are the main ones that I incorporated. If they didn't get attached, we'll make sure we get them to you. So what I would like to go over with you guys today is 2015 IBPA program, just an overview of the solicitations that are out there now. The 2016 IBPA program, so give you an overview of the solicitations that are currently being reviewed, solicitations of interest to logistics, a little bit on the scope of the solicitations. I want to show you a couple screenshots of the National Solicitation Plan, latest VIPR activity, at least as of last week, a little bit on the incident contract project inspector, some on inspections, going into the administration of the IBPA, and then vendor relationships, and then we'll open it up to some questions. So the first slide that I wanted to show you was these are the solicitations that are currently being solicited now. The ones that are highlighted are ones that that may be of interest to the logistics group. You know, as far as the chipper goes, if it was a chipping operation that was in camp, it may be applicable to the logistics. Most of the chipper operations that I saw last year in Region 6 anyway, while I was over visiting those folks for a while, were mainly by the operations folks. So just depending on where that chipper is being used, that may or may not involve logistics. Let's see, Regions 2, 4, 5, and 6 have historically solicited for that resource category. Of course, the gray water, potable water, trailer-mounted hand washing station, all regions except for Region 8 and 9 are soliciting for that. In Region 1, the BLM was soliciting for that for these guys in the past, at least for the, they had the lead, and so that's not in VIPR in Region 1. Let's see, the miscellaneous heavy equipment. That may be applicable to ground support, you know, to logistics if ground support uses the road grader, for example, but I didn't highlight that. So all regions except Region 9 are using that template. The mobile laundry used primarily Region 2, 3, 5, and 6. And all the regions that I'm referring to are the Forest Service regions, so apologize for that. But I think we've all been doing this long enough. You guys are all kind of familiar with the regions. If not, we can address some of those in the questions. The mobile sleeper unit is being used in Region 5. That's actually being done under the generic template, so, but it is Region 5 centric. Portable toilets, portable hand washing stations, and wheelchair accessible portable toilets. Regions 3 and 5 used the template in 2012, 13, 14. In 2015, it looks like just Region 5 is going to be doing that. All the other geographic areas are going with the commercial source available local to the incident. Okay, the next slide, these are solicitations that are currently being reviewed. They're being reviewed by the Contract Equipment Task Team, and we'll talk a little bit about those guys a little bit later. But resolicitations, they're all resolicitations. Resolicitations means that we've done at least one cycle of them. When you see the National Solicitation Plan on an upcoming slide, that'll make a little bit more sense, but you kind of have to go back in history to see some of the older stuff. So the heavy equipment with water, which includes pump cats, skidgins, and soft tracks. Refrigerated trailer, that one would be, again, these are highlighted if they're applicable to logistics. Water handling equipment includes the engines, support water tenders, and tactical water tenders. And the weed washing unit, again, depending on where that's located, logistics may or may not have functional control of that. I also wanted to just let you guys know that in April, we got a couple dates right now that the CETT is looking at. We will be hosting an acquisition community training forum. We call them ACT forums. You register through AgLearn. It is a Forest Service. If you're Forest Service, you go in through AgLearn. You can register. It'll keep track of everything in there, including your certificate and the like. We have had other folks that have participated that are not Forest Service, so we've just kind of treated and address those outside of AgLearn, and I usually the person that we work with in the Washington office on that training, she'll send me a blank certificate, and then I'll just usually populate it for the folks that have attended, or if folks have attended in a group, say in a conference room or something like that. So the benefit of that for folks is if you're looking for continuous learning points, we'll give two continuous learning points, 2 CLPs for this. I say 2 because last year we did a 2-hour presentation, and that's probably what we'd be looking at again this year. So that's kind of how I have it structured at this time, but keep an eye out for that. And again, that should be available through AgLearn, and we'll try to get out to mailing lists and everything once that gets firmed up a little bit. All right, let me go back here one slide. So on the heavy equipment with water, regions 1, 2, 4, and 6 are using those. Refrigerated trailers, regions 2, 4, 5, and 6. Water handling, all regions are soliciting for that. And on the weed washing, regions 2, 4, 5, and 6 are soliciting for that in VIPR. Region 1 uses a lot of cooperators. They have a lot of cooperators that assist them with their procurement efforts. And the note I've got here is that that one, BIA was at least planning to help them with that. So, all right, solicitations of interest to logistics. So this includes all of those that are currently out there. And so the solicitations, with the exception of the trailers and the crew carrier bus, are all on a 3-year cycle. The crew carrier bus and all 4 of the trailers, that would be the clerical support unit, the communications trailer, the GIS unit, and the helicopter operations support trailer. They're all on a 5-year. That was at request of Incident Support Branch at Boise, who is doing those solicitations for us. So, all right. I'm not going to go through every one of those for you, but I'll leave them up there for a second just so you can kind of take a look at them. Okay, so this is national, regional, and I'll give you a little bit more information on the scope of a national, regional, and then going forward a local. So of the 21 solicitations that we have available in VIPR, logistics kind of has their hands or may have their hands on 15 of those. So a significant number there for you guys to manage out there. Okay, so here's where I was going to go into the scope of the solicitations for you. Basically, a national solicitation is a solicitation that's done for all of the regions by one CO. A regional solicitation is a solicitation that is normally done by the lead incident contracting officer for the geographic area. In some cases, two regions can partner and do some interregional stuff. I know regions 2 and 4 were sharing some stuff, but I've kind of heard lately that they're going to probably go in their own direction and not share. For example, I think region 4 did the water handling and region 2 did the heavy equipment with water. And I think now each of those regions are going to be doing their own things. So on the local, what we're seeing on the local solicitations is that the incident contracting officers are actually doing those and taking the lead on those, but those solicitations are actually set up that you could go down to a level below the regional office, for example. So a forest, a zone, or a region, or a province, they could do that if that's how the geographic area wants to administer or deal with their workload. Again, right now we're seeing most of those are still being done by the incident contracting officer. So that'll vary by region to region. You know, the cover page of the agreement is the standard form 1449, SF 1449, and it has all of the contracting officer's information on the signature blocks there, as well as contact information and the like. So, okay, so here's a shot of the National Solicitation Plan. What you see on this screen is the national and the regional, and so what I've done is when we first started dealing with the plan, we just kind of had the solicitation, the most current acquisition cycle. A lot of folks were asking for out years to kind of help them administer and figure out how they were going to handle the workload for the IBPAs. So that's what we did here. And the good thing about this one, I always joke people, is that this goes 1 year beyond when I'm first eligible to retire. So I think I've done my job here. So that's a little humor for you. So the next one is the local categories. And so right now, that is what we're soliciting for with the local, at the local level. And again, you know, if you look at this, a vehicle driver, I know has got some of the geographic areas, a CO below the incident CO, or maybe a CO out on a zone or something like that, that is actually doing that workload there for them. The website there for you to refer to, and I want to say about 2011, we began a 2-year phase-in of the local IBPAs, and you know, that was just the introduction of competition for local resources as well, and to comply with the OIG audit. It's also become kind of practice that and I'll go back to the first page here, that every year we normally update this on or about the first day of the fiscal year. This one we got October 28th, and so right around that date you're going to normally see an update come, and that's if we've made any changes to any of the equipment categories, or you know, in the case of the national, when we went to a 5-year, that was reflected. So it allows us to catch edits on that and to give the most current document to the field. So, okay. So a little bit on VIPR activity. So as of last week, or actually Monday, this is the status. And now what I've done here, and I know I was visiting with Sue earlier in the week, and I think she gave you a view of like 2009 to 2014. So that was some information that we shared with the field, just so they could kind of see the numbers and how they fluctuate. So what I've included here is the most recent acquisition cycles. So for example, 2013, 14, and 15. 2015 is the last year in the 2013 solicitations that were issued. So that was the stuff that we're looking at now on that 2016 slide. But just to give you an idea there, I also included the 2012. So what's being solicited for now in 2015 is what's currently awarded on the 2012 line. So I fully expect that, you know, within the next couple, 3 months, I know a lot of the field, the COs are making awards as we speak. Those numbers are going to look a lot different there as far as the 2015 data. There may even be some more solicitations that are issued. Now, the tricky thing about this screenshot here too is it does include all of the data that we have in VIPR. So it could include awarded, any that were expired. You know, for example, I know the clerical support was protested last year, but it's still counted in there, and then it was canceled, and then it was reissued. So it includes any that might have been closed and any that are in a pre-synopsis type status. But as you can see, the numbers are pretty significant, and we got a pretty good we're getting a pretty good response from the vendors on providing us with equipment. Almost too much in some cases, you could say, but that's another story. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the administration of the l-BPA. And so what do you need to know about the l-BPA? We have standardized provisions or clauses or text. A lot of folks boilerplate, so you might hear them referred to as boilerplate. And then we have template specific specifications. So what I did with this slide was just kind of break out here what is template specific versus what is not. So D1 is the scope. That's usually a paragraph unique to each solicitation type. D2 are the technical specs, so it's unique. D3 may or may not have personnel requirements. Water handling personnel requirements, they're a little bit more specific with engine boss and firefighter 1, firefighter 2. But when you look at a D3 for a potable water or gray water, it's probably just going to say we expect you to have RT 130 and we want you to have all the required licenses and things like that. So a lot of it is consistent across the board, but that's where you're going to see if there's any unique personnel requirements for the personnel on that particular solicitation. D6 is where we explain the attributes to include if there's a formula used in the solicitation or in the listing of the resources on a dispatch priority list. That's where you'll find that. More information on that you'll find in Exhibit J, and that would be the attributes if there are attributes. An Exhibit M may exist. I think right now we have an Exhibit M in the water handling, the heavy equipment with water, and there's currently one in the crew carrier bus as well. But the equipment folks that are managing the inspection checklist would like all of those to be in one place, and so we'll probably look at changing that down the road to remove it from there so that we can edit it if need be, and I can show you guys in another slide here at the end where we're going to put that information. D21 is the payment stuff. So D21, I didn't include it there, but it may also be the payment methods are going to be specific to the solicitation. And that was information that was brought forward from the method of hire charts called the Equipment Standards and Method of Hire out of Exhibit 23 of Chapter 20 of the Interagency Incident Business Management Handbook. So D21.8.1 is normally where you would see the daily rate. If there's mileage, if there's transports, that's where you're going to get into a little bit of the meat on that. And that will help with the administration of it as well. Hopefully you've got a procurement unit leader or somebody that's familiar with where that stuff is in the template, and they can assist you at the incident. And so again, the last bullet there is, you know, what do you do if equipment breaks down? D21.8.3 is where we list the exceptions. When you look at those exceptions and and compare them to the general clauses on the back of the OF 294, they're very similar. And that's by design. So a lot of the clauses and a lot of the standardized text that you see in the solicitations was brought forward with the general clauses as kind of a model. So I think in a lot of places it's verbatim, in some places it may be a little bit unique, but that's a little history on the standard provisions versus the template specific. So again, hopefully you have a PUL or finance section sheet that's familiar with that. I think the ICPIs, sorry about that, the ICPIs are becoming more familiar with the unique aspects of each solicitation. And then, you know, if need be, you can always contact the contracting officer for the agreement if none of those positions are there to answer any immediate questions. Okay, and so inspections. What do I need to know about inspections? There's several clauses in the solicitation that talk about inspections. D16, D17, Exhibit M may have a template in there specifically for the water handling and the heavy equipment. And again, you're going to see that in the crew carrier bus for the time being, but I know that the compliance inspection checklist, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in next slides, they're being worked on, and we're going to move those all into one location, and I'll slide my internet page over at the end of this and just kind of show you guys where that's going to be. So, but what I'm going to refer to you on the next slide is where they're hosted on a Region 5 site. I know Region 6 also has them hosted, but the goal is to get them on the incident procurement website. So let's see here. The D16. D16 is probably going to say no pre-season inspections are done, but it is editable text when the COs and their fire counterparts put the solicitation together, and it's going to allow them to put any kind of inspection requirements that the geographic area may have in that D16. So keep D16 on your mind. You know, you may find some useful stuff there. D17 is the inspection clause once the equipment arrives at the incident, and then we'll look at those a little bit more on these next two slides. So D17, incident pre-use, I've kind of highlighted a few things there of questions that I get a lot of times. What if the equipment didn't pass inspection? Well, we may give them 24 hours to bring that up to speed. You know, I've had vendors come to me and say, hey, you need to give me 24 hours. And I said, no, we don't have to give you 24 hours. We may give you 24 hours. And that was on some cases where the equipment kept failing and kept failing and kept failing, and it was over a multiple-day period. And I think the vendor thought he was going to get 24-hour restart every time he needed to go after something else. And you know, after the second day of repeated failures and the equipment was really not in that good shape, the incident said we don't want to hire this stuff, and so we did not accept them at the incident. So and they came from a different geographic area, and they had to return. We didn't do any time for them. And you know, the comment I remember the vendor saying, or the employee, was, well, I need to get paid. And I said, true, you do need to get paid, so you need to take that up with your employer. I said, but we're not hiring the resource on the incident. So anyway, that's what the clause at D17 says, and I'm sure we may have some questions on that as we go. Non-compliance, D18, after acceptance at the incident. So here's another clause that's in there that if for some reason the equipment becomes non-compliant after we've had it at the incident, then there's some other things to look at. And we referenced D21.8.3 because it talks about breakdowns and how to treat breakdowns, and you know, percentage of a daily rate, for example. And by looking at the hours on the shift ticket, you know, if they were there for 12 hours and they were inoperational for 4, we're going to take that daily rate divided by 12, and then we're going to pay them for 8 hours. So that's kind of what D21.8.3 says in it. So if you're not sure about whether equipment meets specs or not, get with the PUL or with the contracting officer for the agreement. They can fill in any blanks for you on that. Okay, so a little more about the ICPI. It's a new position. It's a newer position, I should say. It's not brand new because we've been having ICPIs out there for a few years now, and I dealt with a lot of them over in Region 6 last summer, and great group of folks, great resource. a lot of them are taking a lot of good time to understand the solicitations, to review them, to coordinate with the contracting officers, to gather up documentation such as performance evaluations or inspections, or if there was issues that came up, they gather that information up and they have been sending it to the COs, which is great documentation for the COs as they move forward with the agreement and their part, if a complaint comes in saying, well, vendor XYZ was not doing it well, hopefully there's something there to support whatever that was. And like I say, what I saw of what the ICPIs were doing last year was valuable as a CO. So I really appreciated working with them. What do? They, like I say, they inspect the equipment. They make sure that it's meeting all the requirements spelled out in the solicitation. They may generate some remedies for some non-compliant. They advise the incident supervisors of contract equipment specification requirements, and they ensure that performance ratings are completed for each contractor. So that's a two-way street. I was at the National Wildfire Suppression Association's conference last month, and one of the things I asked them to do was to be thinking about performance evaluations before their name shows up on the DMOB list, and especially if they come into a long-term assignment, for them to be thinking about DMOB even on day one, because who they're working for today as an incident supervisor, whether that's a division group soup or a base camp manager or whatever, may not be the person. That person may not be there tomorrow. So and I know there's a lot of hard feelings when folks aren't there tomorrow, and they're like, well, I didn't get an evaluation. Well, those are some things to engage your supervisors with, and keep some open dialogue with, and make sure you guys kind of know each other's schedule. Make sure they understand the agreement. Some of the folks that are out there, there may not be a direct CO-COR relationship with the person that signed the agreement. In fact, most times it's probably not going to be that way. And a lot of the folks that come to support the incidents in those supervisory capacities, they may or may not be agency. They may or may not be familiar with the l-BPA. So that's some of the stuff that I asked them to help us with. Make sure they understand the rating guidelines, and we'll look at that here on one of the last couple slides. So, so the exception there is the national, mobile shower, national food, mobile food caterers, and the aviation contracts. Those contracts, those are contracts. They have usually a COR designated to them. And so we have l-BPAs, which are agreements, and then you have these other contracts that I've listed here. And just so you know, we have an l-BPA, an incident blanket purchase agreement. Once that vendor accepts the order and they're on, then we kind of have to, then that's when we step into the contractual relationship. So just a little comparison between l-BPA. So what do you need to know about working with the vendors? Do you have an ICPI? Do you know where to find the performance evaluation report? Are you familiar with D20 in the solicitation? D20 is performance evaluations. Are you familiar with Exhibit E? Exhibit E is where the contractor performance rating is, as well as the rating guidelines, and I'll show you those on an upcoming slide. So what if you don't have an ICPI? I would definitely consider ordering one. I mean, if you've got a lot of equipment, these guys can really help out a lot. The ICPI works normally with finance, for finance. If there's a procurement unit leader there, normally that's the position that that's going to supervise them. But that may be team specific, and maybe team dynamics and synergy might dictate how some of that works. So you may not have an ICPI that can commit to just your incident. I did see, we shared a lot of ICPIs last year. We had some ICPIs that had multiple incidents that they were going to. Some, we got done with an ICPI in one incident, or we were thinking we weren't going to need them, and the first thing we did was we tried to farm them out to other incidents that were going on in the geographic area. So might see a lot of different variations of that. I think my experience in the Northern Rockies a few years ago, they had a lot of the ICPIs that were going, and I think part of that was just due to kind of maybe shortage. They had them going to multiple incidents, and they just kind of traveled around, and that's what they did. So, but again, they were very helpful. So, okay, so the inspection checklist. What I'm showing you here is a link to where Region 5, because Region 5 took the lead on this when we first started coming up with the inspection checklist. And so, you know, the difficulty with the inspection checklist is that every time we make a change, something needs to be changed normally then on the inspection checklist. So we got a couple folks that are working on those, trying to get those updated, and I'll show you the future site there. I'll slide that across again for you to show you where that's going to be and where we've kind of got some placeholders for it. But this is a screenshot of what Region 5 is doing. Region 6 has a similar place on their incident procurement website. And here's a screenshot of a sample inspection form. This is a mobile laundry unit. I just got page 1 up there, but it's a little hard to read, but you can see there, you know, and this one's out of date because the first line there says 2 copies of a complete agreement, 1 copy to finance, 1 copy in the truck. Well, we're only requiring 1 copy now that we need 1 copy. If we need 1 copy, we want it, and you know, if the vendor is also required to keep 1, but in their truck. It's a very minor thing. I mean, as long as they know what they're being adhered to while they're out there doing the work, then you know that's kind of the deal there. So, all right, this form here is actually dated January 2015. We've actually got a February 2015 that we'll be posting. The main difference between the 2 forms, when I was at the NWSA conference, I did have one vendor come up to me and said, you know, when I fax these back and forth, the shaded areas don't come forward in the fax, and if you can see there on the quality of service, for example, and the instructions, those are like in a lighter gray text. Okay, so we basically brought that forward from the Exhibit E in the solicitation as a standalone form. And so I basically made all of the font black ink and no gray text, and then I lightened the shading of the grays there that you see. So in fact, it's pretty light. I mean, if you copied it, it probably wouldn't copy forward. But there's a February 2015, and I'll show you here where we're going to put that. So this is the rating guidelines. These rating guidelines are for any government contract. What we use in the performance evaluation is straight out of CPARS, the Contractor Performance Assessment Reporting System. That's a government-wide system. That's a portal where you enter the information and then people pull it out of PPERS. It's the Past Performance Information Retrieval System, I believe is what that stands for. But anyway, the quality of service, timeliness, and business relations are 3 of the 6, I think, maybe 7 criteria that you might look at in a more of a formal contract. These are the 3 that we felt were big to us since day 1 of doing these IBPAs. And then there is the rating guidelines. So what we're seeing on some of the performance evaluations is, like, for example, 3 up here is very good, 2 is satisfactory. So we've kind of, I'm going to go back to the form again. We've kind of modified this form, which basically said that if you're doing better or worse than satisfactory, we want to hear about it. The vendors at the NWSA weren't real receptive to that. They wanted something a little bit more elaborate. But you know, at the end of the day, I told them, I said, we just don't have the people to administer these like formal contracts. You know, we just don't have the CO-COR relationship, and so we've gone with a simplified version. So in here, you can see under the note, under each one of those sections, to justify an unsatisfactory, to justify a marginal, to justify satisfactory. It tells you in there what they need to do. So, you know, it's not uncommon. I'll see a 3 and a 4 all the way down and no documentation at all. Well, it says here, you know, note, to justify a very good rating, identify a significant event, state how it was a benefit to the government. There should be no significant weaknesses. Exceptional is justify more than 1, or if the event where they shined was a big enough benefit, then explain that for the exceptional rating. Last year I only saw one evaluation that really, I would see 3s and 4s. Oh, good contractor to work with. Okay, that seems to me at least to be more on the satisfactory than a very good or exceptional. I did see one performance evaluation where and it was actually on a crew, and the safety officer had made a note on a performance rating and followed up with a general message and everything about how a crew was going up into this intersection and there was a lot of congestion, a lot of traffic. It was the morning, morning shift was going up, and because of the congestion, it was causing some traffic issues. One of the crew members got out, of the crew. They had him get out and they had him kind of help direct in traffic. And the safety officer said, I'm certain that prevented an accident at that intersection and helping to facilitate the flow of the equipment going up and back from the incident. So anyway, those are examples of where it gives you an event, and you don't see that in every case. So in fact, like I say, you see a lot of 3s and 4s with nothing written after it. And I tried to explain to the vendors, it's like it's not fair for us to give somebody, because they would like to see the performance evaluation stuff affect their CBA. They'd like to be factored in the CBA that's using by advantages, their formula of how they place on the DPL. And I said, it's really not fair to you or to us, if we get a 3 and a 4 with no documentation supporting either one of those, to have that person move up on the DPL just because it's a 3 or a 4. So, part of that's us, and, I've created a couple one-page sheets that I'm going to take out with me and that we'd like to get out to the incident business community and say, if you're supervising equipment, here is some stuff to keep in mind. So, so those are the slides. Sorry that we did go a little bit longer than the 15 to 20 minutes, but I wanted to slide across here where we've got a placeholder here for some of the attachments that I talked about, and this is the external web page for incident procurement. So anyway, this is where we're looking to put some of those things, some of the evaluation forms or links to, and hopefully that'll be a reference for you guys as you're out there on incidents. So with that, why don't we see if there's any questions?
Sounds good, Shane. We'll see what we got in the next 6 minutes or so. And I think some written ones came in. Do you want to go ahead and, Josh, are you with us still?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a couple here. First one's from John Thomas, and he says, are the 100/500 person first aid kits going to be out for contract, or going to be going out for contract?
I think the short answer to that is no. The longer answer to that is that I know the risk management committee got involved in some of that stuff, and I know the incident emergency medical subcommittee was involved with some of those decisions. But at one time we were looking at a line EMT with medical kit, and because of the uncertainty with the medical kits and what we were going to have in our cache, they said we're not going to solicit for them. So I believe that was the last answer that I got.
Okay. Next one from Holly Goff. How do you see the VIPR process for truck and driver affecting the pool of contracted drivers, being as most are having huge issues getting their information into the VIPR system? Is there help out there for drivers that have never experienced anything like this in the contracting before?
Was that specific to the vehicle with driver? Sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Yeah, so the first part is, how do you see the VIPR process for truck and driver affecting the pool of contracted drivers?
Oh, okay. So let me address that from a vehicle with driver perspective. So vehicle with driver are basically our pickups with drivers, and so I'll answer it from that perspective first. We're seeing a wide variety of abilities in the vendor community on what folks, some folks go into the vendor app and they're able to just get through that no problem. We have a lot of vendors though, and probably even agency people that are not real computer savvy. And so, that does affect some of the folks and some of the vendor pools that we do have. With that said, I know some geographic areas are working real steady with their, it's called PTACs, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. And the PTACs, I was able to visit with a couple of them here in the Northern Rockies. They're very well versed on VIPR and what's required in VIPR and what the vendors are required to do. With that said, one of the issues that we're seeing pretty steadily is that folks will go into, they'll register so they can do business with the government. Well, to do business with the government, there's a lot of stuff that they need to do. They got to get level 2 EOP. They've got to go into the System for Award Management for GSA and get registered there and everything. And so let's say they make it through all those hoops. So what we're seeing is a lot of vendors, they kind of walk away from their agreements and they forget about that they've got all this stuff in the government systems that they've got to maintain. And I'll use SAM as an example, the System for Award Management. That's SAM. So that's the old Central Contractor Registration portal that GSA administers. Okay, so SAM, they have to touch their account in SAM once a year for it to remain active. And a lot of the vendors are not doing it. They're walking away from it, and they're not doing their due diligence to make sure that their accounts are staying active. And so there's some things in VIPR that our COs can't do if they haven't kept their accounts active. And if everything goes, as planned, and they're on an incident and they let that expire, then we can't make a payment to them until they get their account in SAM active. And I did see that a couple years ago when I was down in Albuquerque helping with payments. I did see that. It was over 4th of July. I saw some vendors were impacted, 10 to 14 days before their payment could be processed. And, they didn't get any interest or anything on that because it was their responsibility to do it. So the vendor app is an application. It's a web-based application. They answer questions and they input information, and it types them. It's pretty user-friendly. We've got a lot of positive feedback from the vendor app, but again, I know we've got that pool of vendors that are just scared to death of the computer. And so hopefully those folks are reaching out to PTACs or to the COs. If the COs are doing some things, there's a lot of help and support out there for them. The page that I've got up here, you can see down here, it says vendor application, vendor support. There's actually a PowerPoint in there that they can go to, and I'll just pop it up here real quick. So vendor application page. There's a PowerPoint in here, overview of using the vendor application, and it walks the vendors through screen by screen what they need to do, and all about the vendor app and how you manage your resources. I'll just scroll through a couple pages here. It gives screenshots of what the vendor app looks like. And this is available to us as well. I refer the COs a lot to this page as well when they're working with their vendors, just to be able to help them.
So Shane,
through the application.
Shane Martin here. I've got another question here, and then we probably should move on to the next person if you don't mind. But I've got this rather lengthy one. I'll read this question, and this is from Rick Martin here. On equipment that comes with any potable water items on them, why isn't the potable water standards that logistics has to comply with, such as the National Shower Contract, the same as for equipment under VIPR? In other words, potable pumps are different and potable equipment are different between the two. Process and logistics has spent many man-hours nailing down what is acceptable for the potable water standards, but when we get a potable water truck or mobile hand wash station, the potable water pump is not on the logistics potable water pump list, but is approved by VIPR, and it really causes issues between the shower contractors and VIPR contractors, because VIPR is not as tight as the shower contracts.
And that's a good question, but I'm thinking that folks have not fully looked at the solicitation, because what we've done is we've pulled forward from the national specifications the specifications that are in the National Food and Shower. If there's equipment out there that is not meeting those specifications, then as an agency, I'll say as an agency, we didn't do our due diligence in whether or not we should award that piece of equipment. I'm just going to scroll down here. This is the potable water solicitation that we've got posted. And if you look at the specifications here at D2, you'll see that these look a lot like what the potable water specs look like. I know we've asked Bill Minke, Bill, not to put you on the spot, but I know we've asked Bill and Mary Fields to look at these specs to make sure that they are in sync with the national standards. You know, the International Standard 61 and the National Safety Foundation, those are in there. So if you're seeing equipment that's not compliant with that, then we need to take that up with the contracting officer that signed the agreement, and so they can either get support locally to help them do inspections on this equipment, or that if there's problems with stuff that it's not out there. On the trailer mounted hand washing station, we actually we put a line in the 2015 version that they're supposed to follow the potable water. So our expectations, the CETT's expectations, would be that the trailer mounted hand washing station vendor is going to, you know, we may have them test it too. We know the water that's going into their trailer mounted hand washing station is potable. When it comes out the spigot on the other end, we want to make sure that it remains potable.
Okay.
And so
Okay, thank you. And one last one, and then we're going to, if there's additional ones that come in, you guys can email it to me, and I'll make sure that we send those to Shane. But the last one was from Holly Goff, which was essentially what happens when they run out of the trucks with drivers. Let's see, let me pull that one up. Will they still be able to do incident-only solicitations? I think that was the gist of the question. Is that what it said, Josh, in essence? The last question that just popped up from Holly.
Yeah, so what happens when the region runs out of trucks with drivers that have VIPR status? Will they still do incident-only agreements?
Yeah, and then so that is exactly the way it's supposed to work. Is once you deplete your resources, and you know, and it doesn't make sense to maybe go to a neighbor for that type of a resource. Maybe it does. You know, that's a decision that's got to be made locally. But then yes, we would do an incident-only agreement. What we ask the folks is that they pull out the specifications that are in the solicitation templates that are back at the website that I had here, and we ask them to use those as the basis for the incident-only agreement. And then, yes, it is only for the incident.
Great. Thank you. And I'm sorry to kind of move things along. We probably should go to the next speaker. And very good. I appreciate all of your information. That was excellent. And Shane, if there's additional questions, like I said to the folks, send those my way, and we'll make sure we forward those over to Shane, and we can even get that out to the whole group if there was several of importance. Thanks.